TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. With the final and formal outcome of Israel's national elections imminent, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing ultra-Orthodox bloc drops one mandate in favor of main political rival, Blue and White Chairperson Benny Gantz. Fierce battles continue to plague Syria's northwestern Idlib region, where the Turkish military is backing Jihadist Sunni-Muslim militants in efforts to repel an advance by the Syrian army, which is backed by Shi'ite-Muslim Iranian proxies and Russian aerial support. Greece warns that the current migrant crisis is no longer a refugee problem, but rather a blatant attempt by Turkey to use desperate people to promote its geopolitical agenda and to divert attention from the horrible situation in Syria. With the final and formal outcome of Israel's national elections imminent, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party maintains its lead with 36 mandates. Nevertheless, his right-wing ultra-Orthodox bloc dropped one mandate in favor of Netanyahu's primary political rival, former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz, whose Blue and White party climbed to 32 mandates out of the 120-seat parliament, or Knesset in Hebrew. The loss of one mandate spells greater challenges for Netanyahu's aspiration to form a minority coalition and even potentially threatens his hold on Jerusalem's seat of power. The so-called anti-Netanyahu camp is reportedly contemplating possible courses of action, including potentially passing new legislation in parliament, which will bar any person under indictment from serving as the country's prime minister. Speaking to reporters, Blue and White Chairperson Benny Gantz emphasized that he will do everything within the confinements of the election results and Israeli law in order to remove Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from power. He stopped short, however, from providing any details and emphasized that he will wait until the final election tally is made public. Meanwhile, on the streets of Jerusalem, Israelis voiced mixed feelings about the outcome of the elections.
I'm very disappointed. In fact, I'm pretty surprised that half of the country is interested in somebody who has criminal charges against him being the prime minister of the country. Israel has been through difficult times, and I hope it'll get through this difficult time too.
אני חושבת שהעם אמר את דברו. אני חושבת שצריכים מהרגע הזה לקבל את ההחלטה. ולנסות לראות אם אפשר אולי באמת לעשות איזה שילוב מנצח של שני הגושים הגדולים. ולתת סוף סוף מנוחה קצת לעם הזה מכל הבלגן שחווה בשנה האחרונה.
התוצאות הן טובות, מפני שההפרש הקטן הזה בין כחול לבן לבין הליכוד ייתכן מאוד שיוליך לממשלת אחדות. זה הדבר שהכי חשוב בעצם לכולם. אילו היו מבקשים מהבוחרים לשים פתק של אחדות, היית רואה שכולם שמים פתק של אחדות. למה? כי לכולנו יש מטרה אחת, גם לאוכלוסייה הערבית, גם לאוכלוסייה היהודית, בכל האזור פה, לשמור על חיים תקינים.
It is important to re-highlight the fact that neither Netanyahu nor Gantz were able to secure a necessary majority within Israel's parliamentary system, forcing both leading candidates to seek out the smaller parties for the purpose of forming a minority coalition. And while the majority of respondents, like the previous elections, voiced hope for a unity government, both political blocs announced their refusal to fulfill the public's wish. Now in other news, the biannual military exercise titled Juniper Cobra was launched yesterday, during which the Israel Defense Forces and the U.S. military's European Command jointly drilled aerial defense scenarios. According to the IDF spokesperson's unit, the exercise simulated a scenario in which U.S. forces would deploy to Israel in order to support the IDF aerial defense array. Furthermore, the participating 1,000 Israeli and 2,500 American troops will focus on strengthening the cooperation and coordination between the two militaries, promoting bilateral learning and enhancing aerial defense capabilities. The exercise will conclude on the 13th of March, and in light of the concerning developments across the Middle East, most notably the military escalation in Israel's northern neighbor Syria, the IDF emphasized that this exercise was planned in advance as part of the annual training program and is not related to current events in the region. Turning now to Syria, where fierce battles continue to plague the war-torn northwestern Idlib region, where the Turkish military is backing Jihadist Sunni-Muslim militants in efforts to repel an advance by the Syrian army, which is backed by Shi'ite-Muslim Iranian proxies and Russian aerial support. According to the Turkish Defense Ministry, hundreds of Syrian military targets have been destroyed and thousands of its troops were neutralized as part of Ankara's cross-border offensive titled Operation Spring Shield.
Harekatın başlangıcından bu yana 3 uçak, 8 helikopter, 3 insansız hava aracı, 151 tank, 47 obüs top, 52 çok namlulu roket atar, 8 hava savunma füze sistemi, 12 tank savar silahı, 24 zırhlı araç, 27 zırhlı muharebe aracı, 34 silahlı pick-up, 60 askeri araç ve 10 mühimmat deposu imha edilmiş, 3138 rejim unsuru etkisiz hale getirilmiştir.
The Turkish advance does not come without loss, as the Syrian army remains committed to its own operational goals, which includes devastating the invading Turkish army and the jihadist militants it backs.
Bahar Kalkanı harekat alanında bulunan unsurlarımıza rejimin açtığı ateş sonucu 2 kahraman silah arkadaşımız şehit olmuş, 6 kahraman silah arkadaşımız yaralanmıştır. Bölgede tespit edilen hedefler derhal ateş altına alınmıştır. Hedefler vurulmaya devam edilmektedir.
In spite of Syria's resolve to capture its entire territory, Turkey's defense minister insisted that Operation Spring Shield advances as planned.
Bahar Kalkan Harekatı'nın arkadaşlar planlandığı şekilde faaliyetler devam ediyor. Orada yine biz bir an önce orada huzurun, sükunun sağlanması için gayret gösteriyoruz. Mehmetçik orada gerçekten kendisine verilen görevi büyük bir özveriyle, büyük bir kahramanlıkla bugüne kadar olduğu gibi yerine getirmeye devam ediyor.
It is important to highlight that Ankara's declared goal for Operation Spring Shield aims to repel the Syrian army and its allies from a territorial corridor in Idlib Governorate, where jihadist militants and their families currently reside. Ankara is wary that the Syrian population living there, approximately 1 million of them, could potentially flood northward into Turkey, which already hosts some 3.7 million refugees and illegal migrants. And while the Syrian army does not pose a significant challenge to Turkey's military might, Moscow's continued support for the Assad regime is the main challenge to Ankara's aspired goals. That is why President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will travel to Moscow later this week to meet with President Vladimir Putin, during which he will urge his Russian counterpart to formulate a viable ceasefire that will reassure Ankara's voiced concerns.
Bölgede süratle bir ateşkesi sağlayabilmek. Ana başlığımız o.
Earlier this week, President Vladimir Putin was quoted by Russian media as saying, "We're not going to fight against anyone. We're going to create conditions so that nobody wants to fight against us." And while Turkey sends hundreds of thousands of migrants in the direction of its Greek neighbor in efforts to force Europe into the volatile situation, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov emphasized yesterday during a joint press conference with his Finnish counterpart in Helsinki that Europe cannot expect Moscow to stop its battle against terrorism in light of its migrant-related problems.
Мы в полной мере понимаем сложность проблемы мигрантов для Европейского Союза. Я уже об этом упоминал. У нас есть диалог по вопросам миграции между Российской Федерацией и Европейской внешнеполитической службой. И мы будем его продолжать, будем стремиться внести вклад в решение этой проблемы. Но мы не можем содействовать решению проблем миграции за счет прекращения борьбы с терроризмом, к чему призывают некоторые политические деятели в Европе.
Meanwhile, in Greece, the European Union sought to reassure Athens of its resolve to tackle the problem on its eastern border with Turkey.
The situation at our border is not only Greece's issue to manage, it is the responsibility of Europe as a whole, and we will manage it in an orderly way with unity, solidarity, and determination. Those who seek to test Europe's unity will be disappointed. We will hold the line, and our unity will prevail. Now is the time for concerted action and cool heads and acting based on our values. Turkey is not an enemy, and people are not just means to reach a goal.
While the Greek Prime Minister welcomed the EU's support, he also emphasized that the current situation is no longer a refugee problem, but rather a blatant attempt by Turkey to use desperate people to promote its geopolitical agenda and to divert attention from the horrible situation in Syria.
Turkey, in full breach of the EU-Turkey statement, has systematically encouraged and assisted tens of thousands of refugees and migrants to illegally enter Greece. It has failed and will continue to fail should it pursue this strategy. This is no longer a refugee problem. This is a blatant attempt by Turkey to use desperate people to promote its geopolitical agenda and to divert attention from the horrible situation in Syria. The tens of thousands of people who tried to enter Greece over the past few days did not come from Idlib. They have been living safely in Turkey for a long period of time. Most of them speak Turkish fluently. And Europe will not be blackmailed by Turkey over the refugee issue. We stand ready to support Turkey in dealing with its refugee problem and find a solution to the Syria conundrum, but not under these circumstances.
Thank you for watching us. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem as well as the peace and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan. Have an Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.